I'd like to do an overview on boundaries since it's Friday. Hopefully, you guys got enough information this week, but just in case, I want to solidify the significance of boundary setting, not just for our recovery, but to enjoy a good quality of life in general. Boundaries are limits that we place on others and ourselves. It is said that boundaries is where you end and another person begins. Think of fence lines, property lines, things like that. When you're considering boundaries, a clear indicator that maybe a boundary should be established is when you're uncomfortable or when you find yourself in dangerous situations or you're doing something that is harmful to you. And I would also say that before we begin thinking of other people and where we need to tell them to not do something or to establish a boundary with them, we ought to begin with ourselves primarily. And this ties into having self respect. When you learn to respect yourself, other people kind of pick up on that. And it's unfortunate, it shouldn't happen, but it does. When someone doesn't have respect for themselves, when someone lacks self worth, doesn't have a self esteem, predatorial, exploitative, narcissistic, abusive type of individuals hone in on that. And they take advantage of people that are vulnerable. Up on the board, I've placed 3 separate categories of human functioning. On the top, we have attachment styles, and then we have communication styles, and then boundary styles. I put those all there because there's something about it that when it's all combined, you can see maybe where you've been at and also what's the correct way or the healthiest way to operate when you're dealing with others and just living your life. So we'll start with the attachment styles. This comes from a theory that was originated by a guy named John Bowlby. And what he discovered was that childhood development can produce a certain attachment style in an individual later on in life that is directly linked to how they were treated, how they were raised as kids. And he noticed that there is a pattern of behavior with people in relationships as adults. And there are different types of attachment styles. One being anxious attachment, another being avoidant attachment, and then the disorganized attachment style is a combination of anxious and avoidant. That tends to be the more complicated version because when a person has a disorganized attachment style, it's like pushing and pulling. Whereas if you're just the anxious type, you're the one that's constantly seeking, needing connection, approval from others. And an anxious attachment style usually comes from a person that was neglected or starved of love or nurturing. And so that's their preoccupation. Even as adults, they're still trying to get that bond that maybe they didn't have as a kid. Sure.
What happens if you're anxious attached but you were loved?
I mean, I don't know. That's something that maybe your therapist can help you explore further. But there's a connection there somewhere. Everybody's different. There are people who are avoidant, who are also mistreated, neglected, perhaps abused or whatever. And so they learn not to trust people, not let people get too close. And even if it didn't happen to you in childhood, maybe you were burned in your early relationships, your first romantic relationship, whatever, maybe you got your feelings hurt. And so after that, you decided, I'm never going to trust anybody. I'm not going to let nobody get too close because I don't want to go through that again. And so you tend to keep people at bay and you're more standoffish. So the anxious person craves intimacy. and is terrified of abandonment. The avoidant person prefers their independence and is afraid of intimacy. The disorganized person wants both. They crave intimacy, but yet they're also very fearful of being hurt. And that's what I'm saying. It's more complicated because that kind of person on one day can say they need you, they want you there, they're desperate to keep you in their life, but the next day they might just push you away or do something to sabotage the relationship. And it's hard to manage that. If you're the other person trying to deal with somebody who has a disorganized attachment style, it can be very confusing. But what happens usually is the anxious person and the avoidant person connect like magnets. They attract each other. And the avoidant person is very pleased with the anxious style because that anxious person is all too willing to give, and not really demand anything in return. They're just happy to have somebody in their life. And the avoidant person might tell them clearly, like, I don't want anything more than just the superficial physical contact. Let's just be friends with benefits. And the anxious person is like, I'll take it, because they're desperate. And they're happy to have just somebody in their life. And then in their mind, the anxious person is thinking, well, maybe I can get this person to fall in love with me. So at least I got my foot in the door, and now I can work my way in further. But the avoidant person is not interested in that. And so in the beginning, it seems to work, and the anxious person might pretend to be on board with the avoidant's initial agreement that they established. But they do want more. And it's not going to be enough just to keep it superficial. So let's say 6-7 months into it, now the anxious person is like, okay, this has been long enough. What's going on? Like, can we at least be exclusive? Can we be, like make it official? Can you start claiming me? Can I claim you now? Like, what's going on? Because you're the only one I want to be with, and it's been this long. Like, come on. And then so they'll start pressuring the avoidant person. The avoidant person, on the other hand, will say, you know what? That's exactly what I don't want. And I told you from the beginning, and now you're scaring me. And so they'll retreat, they'll withdraw. And just imagine what it looks like when a cat and a dog are trapped in a room somewhere, right? The cat's running from the dog and the dog's pursuing. And that's the anxious person is chasing the avoidant person like, love me. I love you. Don't you know I love you? Like, and you love me too. You just don't know it yet, right? And so the anxious person is very desperate, very pushy after a while. And the avoidant person is just running from them. So it doesn't work out. But if you consider yourself in your past relationships, you might be able to identify a pattern, because what happens is we usually end up dating the same type of person, even though we change partners. I know I did in my history. I dealt with the same type of narcissistic woman. It was just a different person with a different face, but the same behavior, and it just got more toxic. From my first relationships to my most recent ones, up until now, I noticed that there was a progression, just like the addiction cycle, right? It's progressive. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. And I had to scratch my head and think it through. And like, well, what's going on? What is it about them that I'm drawn to? And what's going on with me that I seem to attract them as well? Because there's signals being sent by both parties. When it comes to the attachment style that is the most healthy and beneficial, we want to develop a secure attachment. And that's usually established early on if the child is taken care of, nurtured properly by their caretakers, the parents, hopefully, or whoever's there for that kid. That's something that should be fundamental and the foundation of everyone's life. And every human being, I believe, is entitled to that. Sad to say, that's not the case. A lot of kids grow up and they're not loved the way they're supposed to be loved. And it's not necessarily because the parents or the caregivers are malicious or intentionally being neglectful or abusive. They could just be doing what was done to them or the best that they can, which just isn't good enough. They're missing the mark. Sometimes people are trying to survive and they just got to work, and it could be a single parent home. There could be all different variables, but nevertheless, it does impact the brain's development. And this is neurochemistry. This has to do with how your chemicals are released in your body when it comes to your survival mode. and the amygdala being activated and the cortisol being released and the adrenaline and those things. And when you experience anxiety and fear, and sometimes people shut down and freeze up, or sometimes they get dysregulated and angry and fight. And what happens with a disorganized person, usually a person who was raised in an environment where they were loved and also mistreated. And in my case, I can relate to that because there were times where my father was very nice and generous, and he'd take us out on trips, and we'd go to Knott's Berry Farm, or we'd go to Disneyland, or we'd go visit family members, and we'd have a good time. But he was like a Jekyll and Hyde. So sometimes he seemed very nice, and other times he was a monster when he'd drink. Very unpredictable. And when a kid grows up in that kind of unstable, volatile, unpredictable environment, it could produce this attachment style. The disorganized attachment style, people like that usually associate chaos, drama with love, passion. That was how I was. I thought if she tries to kill me, that means she really loves me.
Yeah.
She wants to castrate me, that means she wants me all to herself.
Yeah.
And that's not good. That's not healthy at all. That's not a sign of love and endearment. That's dangerous. And we ought never confuse that and think this means love, because it doesn't. And people tend to create drama just to kind of get that hit of adrenaline or cortisol, whatever it is that they have acclimated to believing that it's what emotions and love are supposed to feel like. It's not supposed to feel scary. You're not supposed to feel like it's the end of the world. You're not supposed to feel like you have to fight for survival. And yelling and screaming and assaulting people and doing all that is not a way of demonstrating true passion. I remember one time I was with a female who started crying because I didn't hit her. And she said, "You don't love me." I said, "What do you mean I don't love you?" She goes, "Why won't you hit me?" That was her association, was love meant abuse. But I was no different. Because like I said, I thought that the anger, the hostility, the drama, the chaos meant that she really cared about me. Definitely not the case. It's not true. When you have a secure attachment, you're the type of person that you know your own worth, first of all. And that's what's so good about when parents or caregivers nurture the child correctly, is they teach the child's importance by the way they tend to that child. Like right now I have a toddler, she's 18 months. She knows she is loved because me and her mother are doing a wonderful job. And I say that because we put in the work and the effort, and we've lost plenty of nights of sleep, and there is nothing that we're not willing to do to accommodate this child, because she is the priority right now, because I understand and know the importance of how her brain is developing. And there's no way she's going to know how to love herself if we don't love her first. This is just how it goes in nature. Children are very self-absorbed. They're very narcissistic because they're learning and they're exploring the world around them, and they're picking up things from people, whoever's around them. Their environment is how they're going to internalize and think about themselves, and also how they're going to relate to other people. So I want her, first of all, to know that she is precious, she is valuable, she is important, she is loved. Secondly, I also want her to have the opportunity to become independent and develop her authenticity. And that way, she's sure of herself and she can do things and practice and learning things and not give up. So I let her explore and play and get creative and do things. And this is what helps people develop and learn. And it goes on and on throughout life. It's a good thing. Hopefully, if we do our job and if things go correctly for her, she'll be a healthy, well-attuned individual that will experience a good life. What happens with people who have a secure attachment style, they segregate themselves and usually end up with other people with secure attachment. It's rare on the occasion, if it ever even happens, that a secure person will really commit to a person with any of the other styles, because they send each other different signals. And when some people who are, let's say, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, they say, "I've never met a secure person in my life." No, it's not that you haven't met them. It's just that the signal that you sent was not reciprocated. when you did encounter a person like that and they seemed lame to you, boring to you, not your type or whatever it was, right? Well, you didn't commit any felonies? I'm gone, right? You don't got no tattoos on your face? I'm gone. Well, you never killed nobody? I'm gone. Well, you never been around the block? You never did this or that? You only got 10 bodies? No, I need more. Like, it's like when we have a certain style, we gravitate towards other people that have a dysfunction that is compatible with ours. But when you're secure and you're healthy and well attuned to yourself, those kind of things are not appealing. When you see somebody like that, you're gonna be like, oh no, I'm good. I'm gonna go over here. Right? And so you'll just keep it moving until you find somebody that sends the right signals and you're like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is compatible with me. And that's the good thing. The other good news is no matter what your attachment style is based on your upbringing, it is not permanent. It doesn't have to be. We can change it. We definitely can change it. How does that relate to the communication styles that people have? For instance, the different styles of communication are, as you know, passive aggressive, and assertive. Now, if you think about the attachment styles, the anxious, avoidant, and disorganized would be like an unhealthy, dysfunctional behavioral pattern, right? In the same way, when a person is passive aggressive, or passive in their communication style, it also indicates that there's some work that needs to be done there. People with the anxious attachment style tend to be very passive in their communication as well. Not only are they passive with their communication, but they can be very porous with their boundaries. You see how they all go hand in hand. So a person who is anxious, who is desperate for somebody to love them, because they're needy that way, they can have a hard time advocating for themselves and speaking up and saying, hey, I don't like this, which goes into not having boundaries, being porous with their boundaries. And it's hard for them to say no. They just don't want to say no because they tend to be people pleasers, because they just want to be loved. They want to be liked. They also tend to gravitate towards aggressive people or passive aggressive people. So what does it take for a person with porous boundaries who's anxious in their attachment style, for somebody to exploit them, take advantage of them, mistreat them? All it takes is somebody who's the polar opposite, right? Because these are both extremes. So on the bottom, I put a scale here. Just imagine that's a spectrum. And on one end, you have a person that's anxious or disorganized, very passive, and porous with their boundaries. That would be on this end of the scale. And on the other end, you have the avoidant, possibly disorganized, the aggressive or passive aggressive, and the rigid boundary style. That's on the other opposite. These are all opposite extremes. What happens is the person on one end attracts the person on the other end. Opposites attract in this case. So if you have been the person, let's say, who has been mistreated, unappreciated, undervalued, used, abused, taken for granted, it's not that something's wrong with you. I don't want you to feel bad and guilty about that. It's not your fault if other people have treated you badly. That's not your fault. But there are some things that you can do to protect yourself, to avoid these things from happening, because they're not coincidental and they don't just happen as an accident. I'm talking about relationships, not just random things that happen in the world on a day that you just, I don't know, I just got robbed. It's not like that. This is something that it's almost like we enter into a contractual agreement with somebody when you allow them into your life. And with regard to relationships, even if they're friendships, family relationships, things like that, I want you guys to reflect and see the patterns there. What kind of relationships have they been? What's the quality of them? What has been your role? What has been their role? And it's not to point fingers or to place blame or to feel guilty or to shame yourself. None of that. Just to look at it objectively and see what has been the dynamic. Have I been the aggressor? Have I been the one to pursue and exploit and take advantage of others and trample on their boundaries but not let anybody cross mine? Have I been the standoffish kind of person? Or have I been the opposite, the person that's just willing to do anything for anybody as long as they'll stay? And I'm terrified of anyone leaving me because I can't stand to be alone. It's important to analyze that. Because once you can identify what your attachment style has been, that corresponds with your communication style, that also corresponds with your boundary style, all that stuff goes together and kind of creates the type of person that gravitates towards the other kind of person that might not be good for you. Either way. What we want is balance. Balance would be in the middle of this scale here. We're neither rigid or porous in our boundaries. We're neither passive or aggressive in our communication style. And we're neither anxious or avoidant in our attachment style. So in the middle, I want you to think in terms of having a secure attachment. That is being comfortable with intimacy and your independence. So one doesn't take precedence over the other. Whereas if you're anxious or avoidant, you're going to prefer either having somebody in your life or just being by yourself. The avoidant person just wants to be by themselves, but they'll still engage in little superficial interaction, but they just don't let nobody get too close. It's like a person with rigid boundaries. Or a person who's very aggressive and demanding, like, you give me, I'm not giving you shit. More self-centered, self-absorbed. When you're secure in your attachment style, you're okay, you're comfortable with intimacy. You're not afraid of it. But you're also not like the anxious person that's just so needy that you'll take whatever looks like it, even if it's counterfeit and it's not real. You're the type of person that will be selective and take your time and gradually develop trust and intimacy with someone. You wouldn't just give it away right off the rip. You're going to take your time and get to know somebody. But even if that doesn't happen, you'll be okay being by yourself because you love yourself and you appreciate yourself enough that you can enjoy your own company and be fine. That's the sweet spot. You see, there's the balance. And in that way also you can be very assertive. A person with a secure attachment style can also be assertive. Why? Because they have the confidence, the self-esteem, and they know their value. To be able to speak up for themselves without being a bully, to just simply state, this is how I feel. I'm uncomfortable with this. And communicate clearly, concisely, precisely about whatever it is that needs to be discussed. And also not absorb other people's negativity or match that energy. So if I'm being assertive and I say something to you and you don't agree with it and you lash out at me, I'm still going to maintain my emotional regulation. I'm not going to let you provoke me now to engage in a conflict. I can still enforce a boundary without throwing blows or pulling out knives or guns or whatever. It doesn't have to resort to that. That's not what enforcing boundaries is. Because at the end of the day, you have the determination. You can make that decision. Do you want to continue to interact with this person? You don't have to, even if it's a family member. A person who is secure within themselves, who is able to be assertive and establish healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are about considering others and not just yourself. Boundaries should never be weaponized and used as a tool to spite somebody or to get revenge on somebody or to piss somebody off. It doesn't work like that. That's a game that children would play. But a mature adult doesn't use boundaries like that. It's very important that you understand how to use boundaries when it's necessary and the right way to communicate how you feel about things. Ultimately, if you're establishing a healthy boundary, it's because you're trying to preserve something. If we're having a disagreement and you're saying things that don't sit well with me, let's say you're being offensive, you're making ad hominem attacks, you're attacking my character instead of contesting my position if we're having a debate. Now you're off topic. Now you're getting personal. Instead of challenging my idea, now you're criticizing me as a person. That's not appropriate. And so I could assertively state, this is unacceptable. I will not tolerate you being disrespectful to me. And if it continues, we're not going to have this discussion. I'm done talking. Point blank. And if that person doesn't respect that, you know what it indicates when you try to establish a healthy boundary with somebody that you're trying to preserve, right? The interaction or the relationship with, and they now turn against you even more. What that indicates is that they probably don't really care about you. Don't respect you enough to agree and comply. Because let's say we're close friends or in a relationship. And this is what happens. We start having a disagreement, and then you start attacking me personally and getting loud and aggressive. And I assertively state, this is unacceptable. If this continues, I can't have this conversation with you. We're not going to talk about this. I'm giving you an opportunity to continue the dialogue. But it's based on you now reeling it in and controlling yourself. So if you really want to have this conversation, all you got to do is, okay, you know what? You're right. Let me take a breath. I apologize for being offensive. I shouldn't have said that. Let's get back to what we were talking about. And then we can continue, right? Because I'm trying to preserve what we're doing so we can continue to have this conversation. But if you don't really care about me and you care more about yourself and you just want to hold me hostage so you can pound your ideas or your opinions on me, you're not going to care what I just said. You're going to continue to yell and be disrespectful. And at that point, that's when I'm going to notice that, okay, then you really don't want to talk and have a civil dialogue. You just want to be a bully. I'm not going to stand for that. So that's where I put my money where my mouth is and say, okay, I told you we're not going to talk anymore. Now I'm gone. I gave you a fair warning. And now I'm leaving. I'm separating myself from the situation. I might tell you, okay, goodbye, and hang up on the phone. I might block you. I might walk away. But it's not going to happen in a way that's vindictive. I'm not going to do it out of spite. I'm not going to say, you know, either you listen to me or I'm going to fucking ghost you. It's not one of those things. It's like you're given opportunity for things to get put back on track. And if the other person cares and respects you enough, they'll understand, because you're not being demanding. You're simply stating how you feel and setting boundaries, healthy boundaries that are appropriate. I don't think it's unreasonable to require that people that are discussing something, even if it's inflammatory, even if it's sensitive stuff, whatever the topic might be, for them to be respectful. This is how mature individuals communicate. We're supposed to be able to disagree respectfully. If it turns into a yelling match and now we're talking over each other and we're not really listening, I just want you to know what I think and what I feel, and you just sit there and be quiet. That's not fair. That's not how it goes, right? Boundaries, healthy boundaries, go a long way. And when you can combine all of these things, the secure attachment style, the assertive communication, and a balanced, healthy boundaries, you will notice that not only are you experiencing life differently, but the people who encounter you also get to enjoy the benefit. Because you're at least one person that they don't have to worry about. And you're not part of the problem anymore. You might actually be part of the solution. And this is a beautiful thing when it comes to maybe you bringing something new to the table within your family, in your work environment, or in your relationship. Let's say you have a pre-existing relationship that has been kind of volatile, kind of toxic, kind of topsy-turvy, and now you're working on yourself and you're learning how to do these things, and so you start practicing, and at first your significant other or family member or friend might be like, what the heck is this? Who's this person? They might be thrown off, and they might challenge and be like, nah, you're faking, this ain't really you, and they try to push your buttons. But if you hold your ground and maintain your own dignity and self-respect, because that's what this all comes down to, you say, no, you know what? This is really who I am. I'm standing on this because this harmonizes with my core values as a person. I don't want to look like a fool anymore. I don't want to talk like a toddler anymore. I don't want to have tantrums and act like an immature kid about anything. I'm going to be a grown up about stuff now. This is what I think about myself personally. That's why it's so important to me now. I want to conduct myself like a real man. And I want to be mature. And it's like, I'm a grandfather. I have a grandson, for crying out loud. What does grandpa look like? Still getting into fist fights with random strangers on the street, or getting arrested and hunted down and put in handcuffs by the cops and put in jail. Like, that's not a good look for me anymore. I realize that. I also don't want to see myself on the street, drowning in my vomit, or all strung out and haven't showered in days, or motel hopping, or just all those things that I've done before in the past. I just don't want that to be who I am anymore. That's not the real version of Daniel. Today I get to be authentic and true to myself. And so this stuff right here helps bolster that authenticity. And it gives me a sense of accomplishment. And my relationships now are more meaningful and deeper. And those connections don't just happen overnight. It takes time to cultivate. And like, to give you an example, the girl that I'm with now, my girlfriend, who I share a baby with, we have an 18-month-old. When we first started dating, we both didn't just love bomb each other and do that whole honeymoon phase and, get wrapped up in each other and all that stuff. We did it in a more natural, organic, and safe, healthy way. In fact, it wasn't until 6 months of us dating and being exclusive with each other, 6 months into it, and my girlfriend told me she loved me. And that was great because I already knew it. She didn't have to say it. Actions speak louder than words. So I was never insecure. I was never nervous or anxious about, like, does she want me? Does she love me? I knew it because of the energy and the time and the attention and the affection and all the other stuff, right, is there. The signs were all there and they were all green. There was no red flags. I'm like, this is good. We're moving along. I didn't need to hear that she told me she loved me, but it was nice that she did, and that she took that much time to do it, because she wasn't just saying it just to say it or just to hear it. And this is how I know for a fact, because even when she said it to me, I didn't say it back. And guess what? She didn't get mad. The first woman I've ever been with that didn't get pissed off because I didn't respond with the automatic, I love you too. There's times I was been with girls when they said it to me and I didn't say it, and she's like, did you hear me? I said I love you. God. It's like put me in a chicken wing, twisting my arm in the back, like, I told you I love you, you better say it back. Like, okay, I love you too. That's not how it's supposed to go. If you get pissed off because somebody doesn't say they love you back, it's because you just want to hear it. You didn't really mean to say it to them. You're just soliciting a compliment, right? You're fishing for a compliment. You're doing it for you, not for them. And that's not how love really works. Real love is not that way. Real love is a gift that you give without expecting anything in return. That's what real love is. So when I didn't say it back to her and she didn't get pissed off, I'm like, checks another box on my ideals. This is what I'm looking for. Finally. A month later, so 7 months into it is when I told her, and she didn't say it to me first. I just said it to her because I meant it. And to this day, and we're coming up on 2.5 years. We don't say it to each other all the time, day in and day out. It's not one of those things that we just repeat. It's not cheapened that way, and that's how I take it. I'm not saying it's wrong. So you can say you love you to anybody, whatever you want to do. But the way I look at it is like, I don't need to say it all the time for it to be meaningful. In fact, I think it loses its impact when you do say it all the time to just everybody and all the time. And I hear that a lot in the rooms in recovery. I love you too, I love you. It's like, well, what's the difference? You say you love everybody at the meeting, and then you go home and you tell your family you love them. What's the difference? Right? We show it to each other more than saying it. And that's what's important. And She's independent. I'm independent. She has her own life. She has her own friends, her own home group, her own sponsor, her own sponsees, her own job. She has her own thing, her own money. She has her own stuff, her own vehicle. Like all that stuff that pertains to her life, even before I entered into it, with the exception of the ex-boyfriends and stuff, right? Like none of that's involved. But as far as her having her own interests and things and activities that she does, like she's free to do all that. I don't hound her. I don't track her location, and I don't ask her to FaceTime me and verify where she's at and do all that. I'm not about that. And she doesn't do that to me either. We're both independent people, still confident and secure in our relationship. We work interdependently. I don't question what she's up to, what she's going to do, anything like that. And I don't stress about the future possibilities and all that. I understand human nature. Yeah, maybe she might change her feelings might, change, and she might meet somebody new or might want to be free or want to be alone. And that's okay. She's free to do that. She's not my possession. I don't own her. I have enough love for myself to know that I can still go on with my life, even if she's not involved. So she doesn't complete me. She's not my other half. I'm a whole person. She's a whole ass person. And this is the beauty of when you learn to cultivate these things, it benefits you primarily because you will not place yourself in jeopardy. Whether if it's in bad relationships or you just doing bad behaviors that are harmful to you, like picking up and doing all that stuff. Also, my relationship now, because I have this for myself, she has that for herself, the self-love, the attachment style, the secure attachment, the assertive communication, the balanced, healthy boundaries. We have boundaries. And let me tell you, we are still getting closer. And that's how good relationships should go. They should get better over time. It shouldn't be the best it's ever going to be in the beginning, the first day or the first week. That's how all my past ones were. It was like the height of the relationship was when we first met. That's love bombing. Because after that comes all the trouble. That cycle of abuse starts with a narcissistic person or an abusive person. And you're constantly chasing that first high. Just like addiction with substances. We're always pursuing that first high, but it's never there. It's gone. Once we had it, it's over. It's done. It's not coming back. Now we're going to get all the consequences. That's all that's left. But in this way, with a healthy relationship, we're cultivating and growing and developing and getting even closer and more fond of each other and more familiar with each other. And the love is getting stronger. It's not being depleted. I'm not constantly reflecting on when we first met. I'm actually enjoying where we're at now, and I'm looking forward to the possibilities in the future, whatever that might be. But I'm also not depending on it as a guarantee. Like I said, she's free to go any day, anytime. Today, if she decides to pack up and leave, okay. It might sting a little, but she's free. And I respect that. And I think even if we were to break up, I wouldn't want that. I mean, that's not in my mind. I don't see myself leaving her or wanting her to leave. But if things don't work out, I know we can still get along. We can still get along. Because the type of person she has become and the type of person I have become. So it doesn't have to be bad blood like it's been with all my other exes. Like we hate each other. My ex-wife even tried to get me murdered. And we were married for 10 years, right? So it's just very different. When you change, you notice that the people around you change, and you're also in a position of power to decide who you're going to be involved with and at what level. And boundaries can always shift and change. One day you might have a boundary with a person and you don't want them to get too close, but then you start to get to know them and you might allow them a little closer. But just because you allow somebody closely into your life doesn't mean that now they're there forever. Understand and know that you have the power to decide if that needs to end. And I've had to do that with people, with old friends I've known for decades, and even family members. My own mother set a boundary and say, you know what? I love you, but I'm over here. Because I need to preserve my peace. And if I'm going to interact with somebody and that person's just going to dump their troubles on me and their problems and be abusive or stress me out and all that stuff, and they don't want the solution and they don't want to reason well with me and be rational, what else can I do but say, okay, well, I got to go. I got to focus on me and my life. Like, I'm not going to let myself continue to experience this drama and this chaos. Because in my recovery, I know that when I become restless, irritable, and discontent, that's a recipe for disaster. And at the end of the day, if I were to relapse, it's not just an event, it's a process. And usually that process includes me allowing things in my life that shouldn't be there. And it's up to me to decide how that's going to unfold. Sure, there are things that I can't control. Of course there are. But I can definitely deal with myself and my own feelings and make decisions that are in my own best interest. That is what I recommend for all of you. Please, please begin to love yourself unconditionally. Forgive whatever mistakes or flaws you might have from the past or presently, anything like that. Have nothing against yourself whatsoever. Love yourself in the purest way. And also begin to establish these things. Being secure with who you are as a person. Not being afraid of intimacy, but not being in a hurry to have it either. Knowing that it's okay if you're alone. You can be independent. Trust yourself. Learn to be self-efficacious and self-sufficient. Don't rely on other people. Sometimes our boundaries get compromised because we need somebody to do something for us. Well, start learning to need yourself and do for yourself. Rather than compromising because you don't have any money, so you're going to let this person pay your bills, but at the same time, this person wants some extra favors, and you're not comfortable with that, but it's a deal you're making, so there you go. Or I need a place to stay, so I'm going to go over here, I'm going to tolerate this person micromanaging my life and hovering over me and everything I do, but I don't got to. It's like, you have choices, you have options. Be independent, love yourself, don't rely on anybody else to the degree that they can take advantage of you or make you uncomfortable. And also, learn to be assertive and just speak truth. Even those hard truths, without being timid, afraid, ashamed, any of that. And regulate yourself. Know your own nature and know that if you tend to get pissed off and pop off and get crazy and wild, like, learn to put that in check. That's your responsibility. It's nobody else's. By doing these things, you will experience what it's like to have a robust, healthy, meaningful, rewarding life. And that's what I wish for all of you guys. Let's take a 15-minute break.